Welcome back to Naja News. We have an exclusive. We've just learned that Holly Quadajah Johnson is going to get her day in court after all. The Chicago Prosecutor's Office is looking at Holly, and she will be facing a jury of her peers sometime this week. She is officially facing indictment. Holly was involved in an incident where 31-year-old mother Romeca Meeks lost her life. Initially, Holly, the shooter, claimed self-defense. Within 48 to 72 hours after the shooting, she was set free. Her child was returned to her, and she could start to live her life as normal. Or could she? Naja News has just found out that the prosecutor didn't see it that way. Public outcry has been leaning toward Holly facing some sort of punishment for what many believe was outright murder. At this time, I don't have information on what her potential charge could be, so this is just speculative. But she might be facing murder too, involuntary or voluntary manslaughter. It's up to the prosecutor's office to prove their case in order to get a conviction. Today, we're doing a deep dive on what the next few months, days, or years of Holly's life could look like. Today, we're talking to one of the finest lawyers in New York City of J. Murray Law Firm. Joe was once a member of New York's finest, the NYPD. While on the job, he was indicted for a felony. And then once he was able to clear his name, he became an attorney. I thought Joe was the perfect person to talk to today to walk us through what the next few days and weeks are going to look like for this case. Joe, welcome to Naja News. How you doing today?
Thank you, Naj. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Joe, just looking into it, when you and I were talking off camera, now she has not yet been indicted, and I kind of want you to teach us what's happening. Talk to us like we've never been, I don't know anything about this, like we've never faced charges before. You have, though, Joe.
Yes.
So what happens when someone says, you know what, I want to convict you of this particular thing? What's the next step that she could be facing?
Fantastic. And I read, like, preliminarily, the police did detain her, but released her without charging her, which is not uncommon because they need to gather their facts. I'm sure they interviewed her. I believe she may have given a statement either through her attorney or individually to investigators, because it seems that there's a logical justification defense. She had an order of protection preventing the victim from having contact with her, and she also had a concealed carry. So it looks like she was doing everything lawful on its face. Now, for a justification defense, it's very important that the shooter, in this case, did not instigate the contact. So if she was the initial aggressor, she cannot now use the justification defense. But as the subject of a order of protection, just being there together is unlawful.
So the woman who was shot was Romeca, and we do have conflicting stories on how these women ended up in the same area, Joe. So right. what we know at this point for sure is, like you said, she had the CCL, and she has, and I'm not sure if it's an actual stay away order, order of protection, restraining order, because Chicago, New York, they have different names. But we do know that Quadajah Holly Johnson was able to prove or able to secure paperwork that said, I need Romeca to stay away from me, and the paperwork covered her 6-month-old and it covered her infant. So the story that we have so far and what we've been able to partially confirm is Holly Johnson, the shooter, and her child's father were in the school zone. Carlos, the child's father, lives about 1,000 or so feet away from his son's school. So it was said that Romeca was dropping her son off at school. She was running a little bit late that day. She dropped him off around 9:06. By 9:38, she was about to meet her demise. So it's said that she saw Holly Johnson, the shooter, and her child's father also, because this man has children with both of these women. It said that Romeca saw them standing here doing whatever it is couples do, and she might have pursued them. She might have come to where they are. Now, that is something that's yet to be determined, because we have eyewitness statements that saw a little bit of the incident, but no one's actually seen who approached who. So you're saying if Holly was near Romeca, even if Romeca was driving and saw Holly, if Holly was near Romeca and put herself near Romeca, then Holly looks like she might be facing charges, no?
Well, so what typically happens in a restraining order is it says blanketly stay away from the home, business, or they can designate other areas that are absolutely off limits for the subject to have contact. I don't know if the school would be off limits. So there's an area of ambiguity there. We need to see that restraining order. If that was one of the off limits areas, then just her being on the scene is a violation of law. She's unlawfully there. I think that's an important issue to know. But when you assert a justification defense, you have to be the victim of an assault or a threat. You can't be the aggressor. Like, for argument's sake, and I don't know this to be the case, but if she became the aggressor when she saw Romeca and she then pursued her in a threatening manner, she cannot claim self-defense if she's the primary aggressor. So to claim self-defense, you have to be the victim of an assault or the threat.
Okay, so what we do know, because I had to go and look at a Google map several times. Initially, it was thought that the woman dropped her child off at school. They had they bumped into each other. Boom, the victim ends up dead. Now what we're realizing is Holly, the shooter, and her child's father, who also shared a child with Romeca, the victim, they were in front or near Carlos's home, which is near the son's school. So they were not directly, the shooting did not take place in front of the son's school. It is a school zone, which in and of itself is a crime, correct? In most cities.
Yes. So that again brings us to an important point. What does that order say? What is her obligation to abide by that order? Definitely home and place of business, off limits, can't go there. But the school, I'm not so sure that would have been a designated area where she can't have contact. Now, if it's an undesignated area that's considered off limits to stay away, the law says if you see each other, that the subject is supposed to turn around and walk away. So that's where this is going to be tough. It's a little dicey.
It gets dicey because Holly shared a child with Romeca's child's father. So this man in the middle, he has a son with the victim.
Yeah.
His new child's mother shoots this other woman. So he rightfully, obviously had a right to be where he was. And we also know it was near his home. So there could be a defense in Holly saying, I was with my boyfriend. We were having family time. We were outside of our homes. I even looked at the way that the cars were parked. So now we've gotten this word that some people are being subpoenaed to come and testify. We don't know how many witnesses so far, but there's only 2 or 3 people. Well, there was 3 people in that situation. 2 of them are still here. And we don't know the charges. We don't know if it's man 1, man 2, involuntary or voluntary manslaughter. We just don't know that right now.
Grand jury is a very informal proceeding as far as there's no judge, there's no court officers. It's the prosecutor, the court reporter, and the grand jurors. They are sitting literally 5 feet in front of you.
So then, Joe, what's the prosecutor's job in all this? I understand what her defense attorney's job is and is not that day. The prosecutor obviously wants to get one for their team. They want to make sure they prosecute this person so they can add another notch under their belt. What is their goal? What type of interaction are they going to have with the defendant that day? And the thing that we have right now, she's on camera when she's talking to someone on the phone. The victim is lying on the ground, bleeding out. The father is walking around trying to render aid. He's bloody from the victim. He's, trying to handle the crowd. She's on the phone saying it was self-defense. I have a CCL. So those were her words. Like, we have her on video saying that on the scene of the crime.
Right. Yeah. No.
Some would say that feels premeditated. Some would say this sounds rehearsed. And that's just speculate. That's speculation. So we can't say that for sure. Then what happens? How long do we have to wait to find out if this girl is going to get charged or not?
So the grand jury actually controls the process. So the grand jury may say, we have questions. They'll raise their hand, they'll go to the prosecutor, and they'll tell the prosecutor, look, I want to know, how many feet away was she when she first took her weapon out, something like that. if it's a proper question, then the prosecutor will ask it. What the prosecutor will do is they'll put it to a vote. So it's important that the grand jury does have a lot of say as to what witnesses they want to hear from. So in that case, they would present a subpoena. The subpoena would be served to bring her back to testify.
How long does it take to get the subpoena? Because I see on Law and Order, it seems instantaneous. Can I go at 5 o'clock and say 5 o'clock that night and say, hey, I need you to appear in court at 9 a.m. tomorrow? Can we work that
they'll
fast?
send police officers out right away to, serve them and bring them right in.
And if a witness refuses?
You would have to get what's called a material witness warrant, where it would be up to the court now to force.
Are we going to force you to come in, or are we going to take you to jail? Are you going to testify?
Yeah, it happens. It happens. It's a very important look. We're talking about potentially a murder case, right? I mean, It's a substantial, liberty interest at risk here. So, that takes
witnesses
precedent.
are important.
Witnesses are important.
Now, and without going too much, because I feel like this could be a separate conversation in and of itself, there have been a few witnesses to appear in this case. Some have done interviews. I've even spoken to a verified witness. And people are having different versions of the story depending on their vantage point and their own memory. Because one thing that I've been reading up, just studying witnesses, is trauma can change the memory. Trauma can change what we thought and what we saw. So how do we, in the court of law, how do we determine if this witness is credible, or are they lying through their faces and they've been hired by either side to make somebody look good or bad?
That's such a great question. And that's what we, as lawyers, our job is when we do jury selection, which is not for a grand jury, that's for a trial jury. But that's what we do. We want to ask those jurors, how would you determine credibility? Someone just got up there and testified. What is it about that person? And you ask them. And so they'll say eye contact, or they'll say mannerisms, they'll say, seem to be like fidgety or whatever. So you'll hear as you start questioning the prospective jurors, because we ask them not individually, we ask the whole panel, but we'll ask one juror and they'll speak in front of the whole panel. We want them to hear, this is your job. Your job as a juror is to determine the facts. The judge will determine what law applies, and then you apply the facts as you've determined them to the law. That's what a jury's role is. So, in that case, you really need to know what jurors' prior experiences are, any biases. Do you have police and law enforcement in your family? Do you have attorneys in your family? Are you an attorney yourself?
Have you been affected by murder?
Yes. Those are all standard questions, whether you have law enforcement, whether you have been arrested, or close family or friends have been arrested, or victims and crime victims. All of that is fair game in a jury voir dire, because you really want your jury not to be biased one way or the other. Otherwise, it's academic.
Joe, one thing I've learned from doing the work I do, we all carry a bias.
Yeah.
Where, some guy in a blue shirt might look like a categoric liar to me, and the guy in the yellow shirt, I could think he's an angel. And that's just based on my own trauma, my prior experience. Have I dealt with it? And those are the things that frighten me about having a jury of my peers to judge the fate of my entire life and freedom.
It's so true. And you know what? A lot of people could be incorrect, but they actually do believe what they're saying. It happens a lot with misidentifying witnesses. They really do believe that was the defendant, but they're wrong and they're mistaken. And I say to prospective jurors, how many times did you go to a function and you thought you saw your friend from high school, and then when you actually got up to the person, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else. It happens in real life. So it's entirely possible it happened here. So you have to.
So there's so many intricate questions you have to ask in order to determine a juror's experience. And just to be clear, so the grand jury that will be a different group than the jury should she be indicted. Correct?
Absolutely, totally different. Grand jury, they hear all kinds of cases. They vote to indict or not indict, and they're done. That's the end of their role in the case. Then it goes on through the criminal procedure. But when they do go to trial, it's a total different jury.
Okay, totally different jury. So if she gets an indictment, then the grand jury will come back and say, they'll tell us the charge that they're recommending. Is that how that goes? Or who recommends it, the prosecutor or the grand jury?
The prosecutor recommends the charges, and then they take them count by count and they vote. You have to have a quorum, and then, once they vote and there's a majority, that's your indicted offense.
Okay. So then now you're at the mercy of these people. They make a vote. Let's just say they vote to indict on, and I'm just throwing this out there, on murder 2, which could be potentially difficult to choose in this case. Right. Now, I'm understanding that a prosecutor is probably not going to prosecute somebody that they know is not a shoo-in, right?
Prosecutors don't like to lose. It's not good for them.
They don't like to lose
cases. So they're going to present the case that they believe they have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Don't forget, it's probable cause, a very low standard at the grand jury. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is much higher. So when they're considering the actual charge, they may overcharge, but the real, heart of what they want to get at may be one particular charge. So they're going to look for the sweet spot.
So if she's indicted of murder 2, that might be an overcharge. So the jury, if the jury could come back around and say she's innocent of murder 2, we don't think she did that, but we're recommending manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. Or if you get one charge, is that it? They can't say, no, we want to go lower.
Yeah, well, it depends on what's presented, and they'll present them one at a time and they'll vote on them. And if the prosecutor doesn't present, so if they'll usually start with the highest charge, and if they don't get an indictment on the murder, then they'll present, a lesser charge. And
so that doesn't all happen at the same time? And I've not been through this before. So we're talking a different trial?
No, it's the same grand jury, but they have to consider one charge at a time, and they all, because they collectively have to vote on it. So they'll present that charge. Hey, how do you feel on this? Okay, indictment, yes, true bill. Okay.
Got it. Whoo, okay. Well, Joe, this thing is getting so convoluted at this time, which is why I wanted to bring you in to kind of lay out some steps for us. And if this person, the shooter, does not get indicted, does this mean she is scot-free? It was a valid shooting, and she is not at fault.
Yeah, that's essentially
a lawful shooting.
It's possible to represent to the grand jury with new evidence, but they'd have to get the permission of a judge to do that. But it's not unprecedented. It does happen.
Okay. So if she doesn't get indicted, then let's just say they come back 6 months from now and say, hey, we want to just try this again. That's possible. However, if she gets indicted and beats it, then we're done.
Yeah. That's it. That's double jeopardy. You can't be tried twice.
Ooh, okay. And if she gets charged, and obviously she'll have to pay a debt to society.
If she's convicted. If she
gets convicted. Joe, I appreciate you for clearing this up and lending us your legalese here today, because this is all getting a bit confusing. And
it is very complex. You're not alone. It's very complex, and just as you go step by step, like right now, we don't have a lot of facts, so it's hard.
So now we wait. It's just kind of a waiting game for all of them. And, those of us that are observers and making commentary on this case, we will be back with details. Joe Murray of one of the top law firms here in New York City and New York State, I thank you so much for joining Naja News. While things are absolutely up in the air now, just like Romeca's life was in Holly's hands that day, now Holly's life and her fate will be in the hands of her peers. 12 of them to be exact. Well, we just don't know what's going to happen in this case, but I'm going to keep you informed. My name is Naja Hall, and for those of you that have just met me, I want to tell you a little bit about me and my style of reporting. But before I do that, I see the comments, and I understand why some of you might be directing your anger at me. What I'm going to say doesn't always go with popular opinion or your perception of what the truth might be. I can firmly admit that I do not know the truth in this case or any case that I'm discussing. because I simply wasn't there. And while I can personally stand beside the witness statements that I present, I can't tell you if these people are telling the damn truth or not. My job is to verify that they were where they say they were, to get them to show me and validate that they have a connection, to transcribe their story and present it here. And yes, sometimes I do read witness statements because people are simply afraid to lend their voices and their actual likenesses to the general public. My God, look how y'all are going in on me in these comments. Well, I can take it. Most people cannot and should not undergo that type of scrutiny from pure strangers. I'm going to keep on reading you witness statements when they're not comfortable appearing on the show. If you yourself have a statement for me and you want me to skew your voice and allow me to use your voice, that's exactly what I'm going to do. If you provide me with anonymous information, my sources are safe with me. Now, there's some of you out there that understand that a bias exists in all human beings. When I'm presenting you a story, that means I've taken my own bias out of it and I'm handing you the facts for you to do what you want with them. I am the messenger in this case and all cases. I often do think pieces, and if you look around my channel, you'll notice that I've been on YouTube for about 13 years now. I am brand new to doing content in this space, but looking into cases, crime, especially those that involve poor impulse control, family violence, mental illness, personality disorders, co-parenting, step-parenting, I'm going to be delving into a lot of cases that tug at your emotions. The person that you've come to hate over the past few months or years might appear as a topic on Naja News. And while I don't intentionally humanize monsters, I will very much share with you the human aspect of them because that's what humanity is all about. Real human beings do monstrous things every day, and monsters can pretend that they're human. For those of you that are here and like to dialogue and like to talk and like to challenge thought and even challenge me respectfully, I can appreciate that. I'm not always right, but you all have already seen me publicly state that information that was shared on my channel, not even from me, might have been inaccurate. I don't know too many content creators that can do that, but my ego isn't in such a place where I can't admit that I'm wrong. When I don't know something about a case, which I don't know a lot about most things, I'm going to bring in an expert. When I tell you that I have validated a witness, that means as a journalist, a trained journalist with actual media credentials, this means that I am giving you the account that was given to me. That doesn't mean that I've been swayed or that I know somebody on one side, because just like in this case, in all cases, I'm trying to piece a story together and present it to you. We're building a community here. And my people will find me. The people that ultimately are going to understand Naja News are cerebral people. You're deep thinkers. You're able to see both sides, even if it goes against everything that you initially believe. You can recognize and check your own bias when you need to. You can stand firm in when you're right. And also, you can throw your hands up and say, I'm sorry, when you're wrong. I don't do salacious. I don't do greasy. I don't do gossip. As a mediator, as a conflict resolution specialist, and a human being that prides herself on building strong relationships based on boundaries and respect. When you come to this page, I want you to be able to put your thinking cap on. If you prefer gossip and salacious things, slander, people throwing one another under the bus, that's just not my MO. That's just not how I was trained. I don't have the capacity or the energy for any of that. And there's people that have built literal, highly visible brands based off that. But I guess I'm taking the scenic route. My goal here is not just to tell stories about people who are going through some of the worst, most traumatizing times in their lives, but I'm also trying to take you through a journey. Part of my training and a big part of my educational background is studying human behavior and then being able to predict human behavioral patterns. That's one of the main things that I'll be weaving into my teachings and content on this channel. And while it might not seem like it, that's what's already been happening with this story. I see the comments and I see some of you putting some things together and dealing with the cognitive dissonance that this thing can be true, but then another thing can be true. That's a very uncomfortable fact. And I can see the people in the comments that are wrestling with that fact and that are having a nearly impossible time understanding and coping with the fact that two things can be true at once. And sometimes one of those things might not be something that you're ready to digest yet. To my supporters, welcome. Thank you. To the people that are still iffy about me, I urge you to just hang out and give me a chance. Subscribe. And if I say something you don't like, don't unsubscribe. Just tell me. But keep it cute though. I'm Naja Hall with Naja News, and I will see you very soon.